Your future is not destroyed in one big moment. It is slowly shaped in silence, through habits you don't even question, thoughts you keep repeating, and small choices that feel too normal to notice. And the most dangerous part is this. While your life is being built in one direction, your awareness is focused somewhere else entirely. But the moment you finally see what is really happening inside your daily life, you will realize something unsettling. Nothing has been random, and everything has been forming you all along. 1. The habit of postponing the life you are supposed to live. One of the most dangerous habits is always waiting for the right time. You tell yourself you will start tomorrow, next week, or when things feel easier. You wait for motivation, for confidence, for better conditions, for life to slow down a little so you can finally begin. But if you look closely, that perfect moment never truly arrives. It keeps shifting forward, always just out of reach. And slowly, without noticing, your life becomes a collection of delayed decisions. You know what you should be doing, but you postpone it. You feel what needs to change, but you ignore it for now. You sense the direction your life should move in, but you convince yourself that later will be better. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and months quietly turn into years. Nothing dramatic happens, yet everything important remains unfinished. Buddhism points to a very simple truth that cuts through this pattern. Life does not exist in later. It does not exist in yesterday. It only exists in this moment, right now, the one you are living while reading this. And if your awareness is always stuck in the future, you never actually meet your own life where it is happening. When you keep delaying your growth, it is not planning. It is not patience. It is a quiet form of disconnecting from your own potential. Because every time you say, "Not today," you are also saying, "Not me yet." You are postponing the version of yourself that could already be forming. And over time, something subtle changes inside you. Your mind starts believing that action is optional. That change is something you can always return to later. That life will somehow give you another easier chance. But life does not wait. It keeps unfolding, with or without your participation. This habit does not just delay tasks, it delays your confidence. It delays your discipline. It delays your identity. Because you don't become strong in one big moment. You become strong by doing what you said you would do, again and again, especially when you don't feel ready. Buddhist wisdom often reminds us that impermanence is constant. Everything is changing, including your time, your energy, and your opportunities. The present moment is not something small. It is the only place where your entire future is being shaped. So when you postpone your life, you are not simply waiting. You are slowly stepping away from the only place where your life can actually change. And the hardest truth is this. One day you may look back and realize you were not stuck because life stopped you. You were stuck because you kept telling yourself there was still time. But the present never stops offering you a chance. It only stops waiting for you to take it. 2. The habit of living unconsciously on repeat mode. There is a way of living that feels normal, but slowly takes something very important from you without making any noise. It is the habit of living without awareness, where days pass, but you are not fully present in them. You wake up, move through routines, respond to messages, scroll through information, complete tasks, eat, sleep, and then repeat it all again. On the surface, life looks active, but inside, something feels strangely empty. You are not fully living the day, you are only moving through it. This is what repeat mode really is. It is when your life becomes automatic. You are physically present, but mentally absent. Your body is doing things, but your awareness is somewhere else. And the most dangerous part is that it doesn't feel wrong at first. In fact, it feels comfortable, because nothing is demanding deep attention from you. But slowly something begins to fade. Your sense of direction becomes weak. Your clarity becomes unclear. Your emotions start feeling dull or restless without reason. You are busy, but not fulfilled. You are moving, but not growing. Buddhism describes this state as a kind of sleep while awake. Not sleep of the body, but sleep of awareness. When awareness is lost, life becomes mechanical. You are no longer choosing your actions deeply. You are just reacting to habits, impulses, and patterns built over time. And when life is lived like this, even important moments start feeling ordinary. Time loses meaning. Days stop feeling unique. Everything blends together into one long, blurred experience. You cannot clearly remember how you spent your week because you were never fully present in any of it. This is how life quietly slips away. Not through big losses, but through unnoticed repetition. The mind, when left untrained, prefers repetition because it requires less effort. It chooses the same routes, the same thoughts, the same reactions, the same distractions. But what feels easy in the moment slowly becomes limiting in the long run, because repetition without awareness does not create growth. It creates stagnation. Buddhist teaching constantly brings attention back to awareness. Not as a concept, but as a way of living. To be aware means to actually see what you are doing while you are doing it. To notice your thoughts instead of being dragged by them. To feel your actions instead of rushing through them. To be present even in simple moments. Because when awareness returns, life becomes alive again. Even small things start to feel different. A simple walk becomes noticeable. A conversation becomes meaningful. A quiet moment becomes clear instead of empty. You stop living in memory or imagination, and you start meeting life directly as it is happening. But without awareness, even big achievements feel empty after a while, because you were not fully there to experience them. You were thinking ahead, thinking behind, thinking everywhere except the moment itself. And this is the silent cost of living on repeat mode. You don't lose life suddenly. You lose the experience of it slowly. The truth is, life is not only about what you do. It is about how present you are while doing it. The same day can feel completely different depending on awareness. One person can live the same 24 hours and feel connected, clear, and grounded. Another can live the same 24 hours and feel lost, even if everything looks fine from outside. The difference is not in the life. The difference is in attention. So this habit is not just about routine. It is about forgetting to be awake inside your own life. And once you see it clearly, something very important changes. You start realizing that you don't need a new life. You need a more conscious one. Because the moment you become aware again, even the same life you were living begins to feel completely new. 3. The habit of feeding your mind without guarding it. There is a quiet habit that shapes your entire inner world, yet most people never pay attention to it. It is not loud. It does not feel harmful at first. In fact, it often feels normal, even entertaining. But over time, it slowly decides how you think, how you feel, and how you see your own life. This habit is feeding your mind without guarding it. Every day, your mind is taking something in: thoughts, images, opinions, conversations, videos, comparisons, fears, ideas. You may not notice it, but your inner world is always being shaped by what you allow inside it. And when nothing is filtered, nothing is protected, and nothing is chosen carefully, your mind becomes a space filled with noise instead of clarity. At first, it feels harmless. You scroll a little. You watch something. You listen to people talk about their lives, their success, their struggles, their opinions. You absorb small pieces of information from everywhere. But slowly, without realizing it, all of this begins to mix inside you. And what you once called just content starts becoming your inner voice. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant in it grows. If you plant confusion, it grows confusion. If you plant comparison, it grows dissatisfaction. If you plant anger, fear, or endless desire, those emotions start shaping your inner world. And if you plant awareness and clarity, your mind slowly becomes peaceful and stable. But the problem is not what enters the mind occasionally. The problem is when nothing is chosen consciously, when there is no protection, no awareness, no boundaries. Then everything enters equally, and your mind becomes crowded with things that do not belong to you. And a crowded mind can never feel light. One of the biggest effects of this habit is that your thoughts stop feeling like your own. You start thinking in patterns you didn't choose. You start comparing your life with people you don't even know. You start feeling pressure from standards you never agreed to. And slowly, your inner voice becomes mixed with outside voices. This creates confusion. Not loud confusion, but a deep, silent confusion. You feel like you are thinking, but you are not clear. You feel like you are deciding, but you are influenced. You feel like you are aware, but you are actually reacting. And in that state, life becomes mentally heavy, even when nothing is wrong externally. Buddhist wisdom brings attention back to one powerful truth. Not everything deserves space inside your mind. Just because something exists does not mean it should live inside you. Awareness means knowing what to let in and what to leave out, because your attention is not endless. It is sacred, and whatever you give attention to slowly becomes part of your reality. When the mind is unguarded, it becomes restless. You may feel distracted for no clear reason. You may feel dissatisfied even when things are fine. You may feel like something is missing, but you cannot explain what it is. This is often not because your life is lacking, but because your mind is overloaded. And when the mind is overloaded, even simple peace feels far away. But the moment you begin to observe what you are consuming mentally, something starts to shift. You begin to notice what drains you and what supports you. You start realizing that not every opinion needs your attention. Not every comparison needs your involvement. Not every thought needs your belief. This is where inner clarity begins. Buddhism does not ask you to reject the world. It asks you to be aware while engaging with it, to see clearly what is happening inside you while you are answering life outside. Because without awareness, the mind absorbs everything blindly. And what is absorbed blindly eventually shapes your behavior, your emotions, and even your future decisions. A protected mind does not mean a closed mind. It means a conscious mind. A mind that chooses what to accept and what to release. A mind that does not get lost in everything it sees. And when you begin to live like this, even your thoughts start to feel different. They become clearer, lighter, and more aligned with who you truly are, not what the outside world is constantly trying to make you become. Because in the end, your life is not only shaped by what happens to you, it is shaped by what you allow to live inside your mind every single day. 4. The habit of choosing comfort over transformation. There is a choice most people make every day without even realizing it. It is not a big dramatic decision. It happens in small moments, quiet moments, when life asks for effort and the mind gently looks for ease instead. This habit is choosing comfort over transformation. At first, comfort feels harmless. It feels like rest. It feels like safety. It feels like something you deserve after a long day. And in many ways, comfort is not the enemy. The problem begins when comfort becomes your default response to everything that requires growth. Because growth rarely feels comfortable in the beginning. There are moments when life quietly asks you to change something about yourself, to wake up earlier, to face something you have been avoiding, to have a difficult conversation, to take responsibility, to step into uncertainty, to leave behind what feels familiar but no longer helps you grow. And in those moments, the mind often chooses the easier path instead. Just a little delay, just a little avoidance, just one more day of staying as you are. And slowly, these small choices begin to shape your entire direction. Buddhism often points toward the truth of impermanence. Everything is always changing whether you choose it or not. But there is a difference between natural change and conscious transformation. Natural change happens around you. Conscious transformation happens within you. And comfort often keeps you stuck at the surface while life continues to move deeper. The strange thing about comfort is that it does not feel like a cage in the beginning. It feels like freedom. Over time, it quietly limits what you are willing to do. You begin to avoid discomfort, not because it is dangerous, but because it feels unfamiliar. And what is unfamiliar starts feeling wrong, even when it is exactly what you need. This is how transformation gets delayed. You start choosing what is easy instead of what is necessary. You stay in situations that feel safe, but no longer help you grow. You repeat patterns that give short-term relief, but long-term limitation. And without noticing, your life begins to shrink, not externally, but internally. Your world becomes smaller, even if nothing around you has changed. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhist thinking is that suffering often comes from resistance. And one of the strongest forms of resistance is avoiding what could help you evolve. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you are also avoiding a version of yourself that could have emerged from it. Growth always asks for a form of letting go. Letting go of old habits. Letting go of familiar thinking. Letting go of the need to feel safe before you move forward. But comfort holds you close to what is already known. It keeps you in patterns that feel predictable, even if they are limiting. And the mind naturally prefers predictability over uncertainty. But transformation lives in uncertainty. The irony is that most people wait for life to change while continuing to choose the same level of comfort that created their current situation. They hope for a different outcome while repeating the same emotional and mental patterns. But nothing changes if the same choices are repeated with the same mindset. Real change begins the moment you are willing to feel a little uncomfortable on purpose. Not because suffering is the goal, but because growth always requires movement beyond what feels familiar. And when you start observing your daily choices, you begin to notice how often comfort quietly takes control. Not in big decisions, but in small ones. Delaying effort, avoiding responsibility, choosing distraction over focus, choosing ease over discipline. These small moments decide everything. Buddhism does not glorify struggle, but it does emphasize awareness. And awareness shows you something very simple. The life you want is not blocked by the world. It is often delayed by the comfort you keep choosing in small moments. When you begin to step slightly beyond that comfort, something changes. At first, it feels heavy, then it feels unfamiliar. But slowly, it starts to feel empowering, because you begin to realize that discomfort is not punishment. It is transition. It is the space where the old version of you starts fading and a stronger one begins to form. And in that space, you understand something important. Comfort keeps you where you are, but transformation takes you where you need to be. 5. The habit of letting approval control your direction. There is a silent force that shapes many lives without ever being seen. It does not shout, it does not force, it simply influences. And slowly, without awareness, it begins to decide your choices for you. This habit is letting approval control your direction. At first, it feels natural to care about what people think. We are social beings. We want acceptance. We want connection. We want to feel included. There is nothing wrong with that. But the problem begins when approval becomes more important than truth, more important than growth, and more important than your own inner clarity. Because the moment your decisions depend on external approval, you stop living your life and start managing perceptions. You begin to ask not, "Is this right for me?" but "Will they accept this?" Not "Does this feel true?" but "Will this look acceptable?" And slowly your inner voice becomes quieter while outside voices become louder. You stop trusting your own direction and start adjusting yourself based on reactions, opinions, and expectations. Buddhism often points toward a deeper form of freedom, one that is not dependent on others. It is the freedom of awareness, where you are not constantly pulled by external judgment. Because when the mind is controlled by approval, it is never stable. It keeps changing directions depending on who is watching. And that creates inner confusion. You may appear confident on the outside, but inside there is hesitation. You may make decisions, but you keep checking if others agree. You may express yourself, but only in ways that feel safe. And over time, you start shrinking parts of yourself just to avoid disapproval. This is how identity slowly gets shaped by external pressure instead of inner truth. The habit of seeking approval does not always look obvious. Sometimes it appears as overthinking before speaking. Sometimes it appears as hesitation before making choices. Sometimes it appears as constantly adjusting your personality depending on the situation. And sometimes it appears as fear of being misunderstood. But underneath all of it is the same root: the need to be accepted before being authentic. And when authenticity becomes conditional, freedom disappears quietly. One of the deepest insights in Buddhist understanding is that attachment creates suffering. And attachment to approval is one of the strongest forms of invisible attachment, because it ties your emotional state to something you cannot control. People's opinions change. Their moods change, their expectations change. And if your peace depends on that, your peace will always be unstable. You begin to live in reaction. If people praise you, you feel good. If they criticize you, you feel low. If they ignore you, you feel uncertain. Your emotional world becomes dependent on external responses instead of internal stability. And slowly, you lose connection with your own direction. The irony is that the more you try to gain approval, the more disconnected you feel from yourself, because you are constantly adjusting, constantly editing, constantly trying to become what others expect, instead of discovering who you actually are. But Buddhism brings attention back to something simple and powerful. Awareness does not seek approval. Awareness simply observes truth as it is. And when you begin to live with awareness, you start noticing how often approval influences your decisions in small ways. What you say, what you hide, what you choose, what you avoid, even the dreams you allow yourself to have. And once you see it clearly, something begins to shift inside you. You start realizing that not every opinion deserves control over your life. Not every reaction defines your value. Not every judgment reflects your truth. You begin to separate yourself from the noise of external voices. And in that separation, something important happens. You start making decisions that feel more honest, even if they are not always popular. You begin to act in alignment with what you truly feel, not what you are expected to feel. You stop living as a reflection of others and start living as a reflection of awareness. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop abandoning yourself for them. Because the moment approval stops controlling your direction, something very powerful returns to you: clarity, stability, and a quiet inner confidence that does not depend on being understood by everyone. 6. The habit of drowning in thought while avoiding action. There is a place many people live in, but very few notice it clearly. It is not a physical place. It is a mental one. A space where thinking never stops, but living feels delayed. Where ideas are always active, but action is always postponed. This habit is drowning in thought while avoiding action. At first, it does not feel like a problem. In fact, it feels intelligent. You are analyzing, planning, imagining, preparing, thinking through every possible outcome. You feel like you are doing something important inside your mind. But if you look closely, nothing in your real life is actually changing. You are thinking deeply, but moving slowly. And slowly, thinking starts replacing doing. Buddhism often emphasizes direct experience over endless mental construction. Because the mind, when left unchecked, can create infinite layers of thought. It can imagine fear that does not exist. It can build scenarios that will never happen. It can replay the past and project the future endlessly, without ever touching the present reality where life actually exists. And this is where people get trapped. They believe they are solving problems by thinking more. But often they are just circling the same thoughts in different forms. The mind creates arguments, answers, doubts, and possibilities, but none of them become real until action enters the picture. Without action, thought remains unfinished energy. One of the hidden effects of this habit is mental exhaustion. You feel tired, not because you have done too much, but because your mind has done too much. Constant thinking creates the illusion of progress, but internally it creates fatigue. You feel busy inside your head, but empty in your results. And over time, this creates frustration. You start questioning yourself. You start feeling stuck. You start feeling like you understand everything, but still cannot move forward. But the truth is simple. Understanding alone does not create change. Movement does. Buddhism teaches that awareness is not just observation, it is also direct engagement with reality. Seeing things clearly is important, but acting from that clarity is what transforms life. Without action, awareness remains incomplete. The mind, however, prefers thought over action because thought feels safe. You can think without risk. You can imagine without failure. You can plan without rejection, but action always carries uncertainty. And the mind naturally tries to avoid uncertainty. So it keeps you thinking. It convinces you that you are almost ready, that you need a little more time, a little more clarity, a little more confidence, a little more information, and so the cycle continues. You stay mentally active, but physically still. And the longer this continues, the more distant action starts to feel. Even simple steps begin to feel heavy. Not because they are difficult, but because your mind has built them up into something bigger than they are. This is how delay becomes a habit, not through laziness, but through overthinking. But there is something powerful that happens when you break this cycle. The moment you take even a small action, something shifts. Thought becomes lighter. Confusion starts to reduce. Clarity begins to appear naturally. not before action, but through action. And this is something the mind often forgets. Clarity is not a prerequisite for movement. It is a result of movement. Buddhist practice often brings attention back to presence, and presence always exists in action, not in mental simulation. You cannot fully experience life by thinking about it. You experience it by engaging with it. Even a small step breaks the illusion of stagnation. Even imperfect action creates momentum. Even uncertainty becomes clearer once you move into it instead of around it. But when you stay only in thought, everything feels larger than it actually is. Problems feel heavier. Decisions feel more complicated. Life feels more overwhelming, not because reality changed, but because the mind kept expanding it. And slowly, thinking becomes a substitute for living. You start feeling like you are preparing for life instead of actually participating in it. But life is not waiting for perfect understanding. It is already happening in front of you, in real time, while you are still trying to think your way through it. And the moment you realize this, something important becomes clear. Thought is useful, but it is not enough. Reflection is valuable, but it is incomplete without action. Because in the end, life does not transform through thinking alone. It transforms the moment you move from thinking into doing, even if the step is small, even if it is uncertain, even if it is imperfect. 7. The habit of staying emotionally attached to what has already ended. There is a quiet weight many people carry without realizing it. It does not always look like pain. Sometimes it looks like memory. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it looks like reflection. But underneath it there is something deeper holding the mind in place. This habit is staying emotionally attached to what has already ended. At first it feels natural to hold on. The mind remembers what once felt important. People, moments, versions of yourself, situations that shaped you. There is a softness in those memories, and the heart often returns to them without permission. But slowly, what was once a memory becomes a place you keep visiting, and then unknowingly, a place you start living in. And this is where attachment begins to quietly take over. Buddhism speaks deeply about attachment, not as love, but as clinging. Because love allows space, it allows change, it allows life to move. But attachment resists movement. It tries to keep things alive that have already completed their natural cycle. And when something is already finished, holding on to it does not preserve it. It only keeps you stuck in it. One of the hardest truths to accept is that everything has a natural ending. Relationships change, people change, situations change. Even your own identity from the past is no longer the same person you are today. But the mind often refuses to accept this. It replays old conversations, old emotions, old versions of reality, as if repeating them can somehow bring them back. But nothing returns in the same form. And while the mind stays busy revisiting what is gone, life continues moving forward without waiting. This creates a silent split inside you. Part of you is still in the past, while another part is trying to move ahead. And living in two directions at once slowly drains your inner energy. You may not notice it immediately. It shows up in subtle ways, a feeling of emotional heaviness without clear reason. A sense of incompleteness even when nothing is wrong. A tendency to compare present moments with something that no longer exists, and a quiet resistance to fully engaging with what is actually in front of you. This is how the past quietly starts influencing the present. Buddhist wisdom brings attention to impermanence, the truth that everything arises and passes away. Nothing stays in the same form forever. And when you truly see this, you begin to understand that holding on is not preserving life. It is resisting it. Because life is movement, not fixed memory. The mind, however, often confuses familiarity with safety. What is known feels comforting, even if it no longer exists. So the mind keeps returning to it, not because it is real, but because it feels familiar. And familiarity can sometimes feel stronger than truth. But the cost of this habit is subtle. You stop fully experiencing the present. You are physically here, but emotionally somewhere else. You look at people, but you compare them to memories. You live moments, but you measure them against something that cannot return. And slowly, the present starts feeling less alive. This is how attachment weakens awareness. The more you hold on to what has ended, the less space you have for what is beginning. Because emotional space is limited. When it is filled with the past, there is less room for new experience, new clarity, and new connection. But something shifts when awareness enters this pattern. You begin to notice how often your mind goes backward instead of forward. You see how memories appear not to guide you, but to hold you. And in that moment of recognition, a quiet separation begins to form between you and the attachment. You are no longer fully inside it. You are observing it, and that observation is powerful. Because Buddhism does not ask you to erase your past. It asks you to stop being controlled by it. To let memories exist without letting them define your present state. To remember without being trapped. To feel without being attached. To honor what was without losing what is. And when you begin to live like this, something very subtle changes. The emotional weight starts to reduce. The present moment feels less crowded. Your mind becomes clearer, not because the past disappeared, but because it no longer dominates your attention. You begin to understand that what has ended does not need to be carried forever. It only needed to be understood, experienced, and then gently released. Because life is not asking you to forget. It is asking you to move forward without being held back by what has already completed its journey. 8. The habit of ignoring the power of small daily discipline. There is a belief that quietly shapes most failed changes in life. It is the idea that only big actions matter. Big motivation, big effort, big transformation. And because of this belief, many people keep waiting for a powerful moment that will finally push them forward. But life rarely changes in big moments. It changes in small ones that are repeated again and again. This is why the habit of ignoring small daily discipline becomes so powerful and so dangerous. At first, small actions feel unimportant. Waking up a little earlier, reading a few pages, doing a small task you promised yourself, staying consistent with something that does not show instant results. These things feel too simple to matter. The mind constantly tells you that real change should feel bigger, stronger, more noticeable. So you skip the small things, and nothing seems to happen at first. But slowly, something very deep starts to shift without you realizing it. Because discipline is not about intensity, it is about repetition. And every time you ignore a small promise to yourself, something weakens inside. Not suddenly, but gradually. Not loudly, but quietly. Buddhism often teaches that the mind is shaped by repeated actions. Not one-time decisions, but patterns. What you do again and again becomes your natural state. And this is where the true power of discipline exists, not in rare effort, but in daily consistency. When small discipline is ignored, life does not collapse immediately. It slowly loses structure. You stop trusting your own decisions. You start breaking small commitments, then slightly bigger ones, then emotional ones. And without noticing, your relationship with yourself becomes uncertain. You begin to promise things to yourself, that you don't fully believe you will complete. And this is where inner strength starts to weaken, because self-respect is not built through thoughts. It is built through follow-through. Every small action you complete builds a quiet trust within yourself. And every small action you ignore slowly breaks that trust. The mind, however, often underestimates small actions because they do not give immediate reward. It wants visible results. It wants fast progress. It wants dramatic change. But real transformation is slow, almost invisible in the beginning. A single small discipline may feel meaningless today, but repeated over time, it becomes identity. And identity is what shapes your entire future. Buddhism points toward the idea that awareness is not separate from action. Awareness is expressed through how you live moment to moment. Even the smallest choice becomes part of your path. So when you choose discipline in small things, you are not just completing a task, you are shaping your direction. The opposite is also true. When you ignore small discipline, you are also shaping your direction, just in a different way. This is why most people do not suddenly become undisciplined. They slowly drift into it through repeated small neglects. A skipped habit here, a delayed task there, a broken promise that felt too small to matter. And over time, these small decisions form a pattern that becomes difficult to break. But the truth is, discipline is not built in grand effort. It is built in ordinary repetition. When you begin to respect small actions, something begins to change internally. You start to feel more stable, more grounded, more aware of your choices. Even simple tasks begin to feel meaningful because you are no longer measuring them by size, but by consistency. And this consistency begins to rebuild inner trust. You stop seeing discipline as pressure and start seeing it as alignment. Not something forced, but something natural. A quiet structure that supports your mind instead of overwhelming it. And slowly, your life begins to feel more organized from within, even if nothing outside has changed yet. Because external change always comes after internal discipline, not before it. Buddhism often reminds us that every action carries weight, even the smallest one. And when you begin to honor small actions, you begin to honor your own path, not in a loud way, but in a steady, silent way that slowly transforms who you are becoming. It is never the big moment that defines your future. It is the small moments you repeated when no one was watching and when no one else thought they mattered. 9. The habit of giving away your power through blame. There is a pattern that feels natural in difficult moments, yet slowly takes something very important away from you. It is the habit of giving away your power through blame. At first, blame feels like relief. When something goes wrong, the mind quickly looks outward. It finds a reason outside yourself. A person, a situation, a past experience, bad timing, unfair circumstances. And for a moment, this creates comfort, because if the problem is outside you, then you do not have to face anything within you. But this relief comes at a cost, because every time you place full responsibility outside yourself, you also remove your ability to change anything inside your life. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to feel less in control of your own direction. Buddhism often points to a very direct understanding of suffering. Life contains conditions you cannot always control, but your response to those conditions always belongs to you. This inner space of response is where your real power exists. Not in controlling everything around you, but in understanding what is happening within you. But blame interrupts this awareness. It shifts attention away from reflection and places it onto reaction. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" the mind asks, "Who is responsible for this?" Instead of looking inward, it keeps looking outward. And over time, this becomes a habit that weakens inner strength. Because growth begins where responsibility is accepted. When blame becomes a default response, life starts to feel heavier. You begin to feel like things are happening to you, instead of through your participation in them. You feel less involved in your own life, and more like a victim of external forces. And this feeling slowly reduces motivation, clarity, and emotional stability. Not because life is always unfair, but because your sense of control is slowly fading. One of the subtle effects of this habit is that it stops learning. When everything is always someone else's fault, there is nothing left to understand about yourself. And without understanding, there is no evolution. The same patterns repeat, because nothing within is being examined or adjusted. Buddhist wisdom brings attention back to awareness of the present moment, and within that awareness lies responsibility. Not blame, but clarity, the ability to see things as they are, without immediately escaping into external explanations. Because the moment you stop reacting through blame, you start seeing more clearly. You begin to notice your role in situations, not in a way that creates guilt, but in a way that creates understanding. You see where your choices contributed, where your responses could have been different, where your awareness was missing. And this recognition becomes the beginning of real change. Not self-criticism, but self-awareness. Blame keeps you focused on what others did. Awareness brings you back to what you can do now. And this shift is powerful, because the moment responsibility returns to you, so does your ability to change your life. You stop feeling stuck in circumstances and start seeing options again. Even small ones, even simple ones. But they exist only when you step out of blame and into awareness. The mind resists this at first, because blame feels easier. It protects ego, it avoids discomfort. It creates a sense of being right. But being right does not always create growth. Sometimes it only creates repetition of the same pain in different forms. Buddhism often teaches that suffering continues when its causes are not understood. And blame blocks understanding because it stops inquiry. It closes the door to reflection by placing all attention outside. But when you begin to observe this habit in yourself, something starts to soften. You catch moments where blame arises automatically, and instead of following it completely, you pause. You look again. You ask a quieter question, not who caused this, but what is within my control now. And in that small shift, power begins to return. You stop being only a responder to life and start becoming a participant in it again. You realize that even if you cannot control everything that happens, you can always influence how you respond, how you think, and what you choose next. And this is where real strength begins. Because a life built on blame feels heavy and stuck, but a life built on awareness and responsibility feels open, flexible, and capable of change. Not because circumstances always improve immediately, but because your relationship with them transforms completely. The moment you stop giving away your power through blame, you quietly begin to take your life back into your own hands. 10. The habit of forgetting the person you are becoming every day. There is a habit that does not feel like a habit at all. It does not seem harmful in the moment. It does not feel like a mistake. In fact, it feels like normal life. But quietly, it shapes everything about your future. It is the habit of forgetting the person you are becoming every single day. Most people think they are only living their life, but there is something deeper happening at the same time. Every choice, every reaction, every thought Every small decision is slowly shaping a version of you that will exist in the future. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, in a way that is almost impossible to notice while it is happening. And this is where the forgetting begins. You become so focused on surviving the day, solving immediate problems, managing emotions, handling responsibilities, and reacting to situations that you stop paying attention to the direction these actions are creating. Life becomes something you go through instead of something you are actively shaping. Buddhism often brings attention back to awareness of becoming. Not just awareness of what is happening now, but awareness of what is being formed through what is happening now. Because nothing stays isolated. Every moment leaves a trace. Every action becomes a seed, and those seeds grow into the life you meet later. But when awareness is missing, you live without seeing this process. You make decisions without noticing their direction. You repeat habits without noticing their effect. You react emotionally without noticing their long-term impact. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to build a future self that you never consciously chose. This is why this habit is so important. Because forgetting who you are becoming is not a single mistake. It is a continuous state of unawareness. One of the subtle effects of this habit is that people often feel surprised by their own lives later. They ask how they ended up where they are. They feel disconnected from their current situation. They feel like life happened to them suddenly. But in reality, it was being created slowly, through choices that felt too small to matter at the time. But nothing is too small when it is repeated. Buddhist teaching often emphasizes impermanence, but also interconnection. Nothing exists alone. Your present actions are always connected to your future experience. The way you think today becomes the way you respond tomorrow. The way you treat time today becomes your relationship with time later. The way you treat yourself today becomes the identity you carry forward. And yet, most of this happens without awareness. Because the mind is often focused only on immediate situations. What needs to be done now? What needs to be solved now? What needs to be felt now? And in this narrow focus, the larger picture quietly disappears. But when awareness returns, something shifts. You start noticing the direction behind your actions. You begin to see that you are not just a person living moment to moment, but a process of becoming that is constantly in motion. And that realization brings responsibility, not pressure, but clarity. You begin to ask different questions. Not just, what do I want today, but what is this turning me into? Not just, how do I feel right now, but what is this shaping within me over time? And this shift changes how you live. Because when you remember that you are always becoming something, even the smallest choices begin to feel meaningful. A single moment of discipline starts to feel like a step toward a stronger identity. A moment of awareness starts to feel like a shift in direction. A moment of care toward your mind starts to feel like investment in your future self. Buddhism often brings attention to right understanding, and right understanding always includes seeing cause and effect clearly. Nothing is random, nothing is separate. Everything is connected through continuous formation, and you are part of that formation. So, forgetting the person you are becoming is not just forgetfulness. It is disconnection from your own process of creation. It is living without noticing the path you are building with your own hands, thoughts, and habits. But once you begin to see this clearly, something very important changes. You stop living only in reaction and start living with awareness of direction. You become more careful, not in a fearful way, but in a conscious way. You begin to value small decisions, because you understand their long-term weight. And slowly, your life starts to feel less accidental and more intentional. Because in the end, you are never just who you are right now. You are always the result of what you have been becoming and the beginning of what you will become next. And in the end, nothing changes in one sudden moment. There is no loud turning point where life completely transforms overnight. What changes you is much quieter than that. It is the slow return of awareness. The moment you begin to see your own mind clearly, the moment you start noticing your habits instead of living inside them blindly. At first, you may not feel different, but something inside you has already shifted. You can no longer ignore what you now understand. You begin to see how much of your life was running on autopilot. How many moments were lost in delay, distraction, comfort, and unconscious repetition. And once you see it, you cannot truly unsee it. This awareness is not heavy, it is awakening. Buddhism does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to stop abandoning yourself in small ways every day. Because the truth is, your future was never destroyed in one moment. It was shaped slowly through unnoticed choices, repeated thoughts, and quiet habits that felt too small to matter at the time. But now you see differently. Now even small decisions feel meaningful. Even small actions feel alive with direction. You begin to realize that your life is not waiting somewhere in the future. It is being created right here, in the way you think, in the way you respond, in the way you choose to live this very moment. And when this understanding settles deeply inside you, something powerful happens. You stop chasing life and start participating in it. You stop reacting blindly and start observing clearly. You stop being carried by habit and start shaping your path with awareness. Nothing outside may change immediately, but everything inside has already begun to change. And that is where real transformation always begins. If this message made you reflect even a little, don't let that awareness fade away in distraction again. Sit with it for a moment. Observe your own thoughts today. Notice the habits that quietly run your life without permission. Because real change doesn't come from understanding once. It comes from remembering again and again. If you want, keep coming back to content like this and let it slowly reshape the way you see yourself and your life.